Hi, this is Remembering the Past, the show where we talk about people who've died recently who've had a profound effect on our history, our society, or our culture. Tonight we're going to lead off with Fred Thompson, who died recently at the age of 73. Fred Thompson had a remarkable and varied career. He came to the attention of the American public in the early 70s as the chief Minority Counsel during the Watergate hearings, where he asked one of the most important questions of the entire proceedings. He went on to become a senator from Tennessee, a TV actor in one of the most popular television shows of our day, and also a movie actor, and he was a great success at all of those. He was also a television pitchman, and he even ran for president in 2008. He was a favorite son of Tennessee, one of the most popular politicians in the last century from that state, and here's Nashville Television on the death of Fred Thompson.
In our top story, Tennessee has lost a bigger-than-life politician, lawyer, and movie star. Former Senator Fred Thompson died in Nashville today at the age of 73.
Tennessee mourning the loss of longtime former U.S. Senator and actor Fred Thompson. Good evening, everyone. I'm Lori Mitchell.
I'm Bob Mueller. Thank you for joining us.
The Republican lawmaker grew up in Lawrenceburg. Thompson was a lawyer by training and once served as a chief minority counsel during the Senate Watergate hearings. He appeared in several films and on television, including a role on Law and Order. Thompson sought the Republican presidential nomination in 2007. Fred Thompson was 73 years old.
Big of stature with a booming voice, Fred Thompson did not enter a room, he filled it. Thompson's name fills the pages of Tennessee political history, beginning in the 1970s when he served on the Senate Watergate Committee with another Tennessee political legend, Howard Baker. In the 80s, Thompson appeared as himself in the movie Marie. Thompson represented Marie Regenti, who tried to inform authorities of corruption taking place on the state's Pardon and Paroles Board. She sued then-Governor Ray Blanton and won. In the 90s, Thompson became a full-blown movie star, acting in such hits as Die Hard 2, Cape Fear, and The Hunt for Red October. Thompson returned to Tennessee in 1994 to run for the U.S. Senate. He won a special election, filling the remaining 2 years of Al Gore's term, and won re-election in 1996. He announced in 2002 he would not run again. The seat was filled by his longtime friend, Lamar Alexander.
He turned into one of the most principled and effective public servants that our state has produced in a long, long time.
Thompson was talked about as a candidate for president in 2000, but did not run. After retiring from the Senate, Thompson took a starring role on the television drama Law and Order, but politics called him back. In 2008, Thompson ran unsuccessfully for president. I spoke with the former senator in 2010 about that decision. 2008, you decided to run for president. There was a real groundswell of support urging you to at least look at this, which you did. At the same time, you had to give up an iconic character, Arthur Branch, on Law and Order. That had to have been a tough choice. Do you regret that? Do you regret making this run for presidency, or was it something you were glad you decided to do?
I don't look back. In my life, it's been a matter of the right thing for the right times. And I've done various things, and I've enjoyed everything I've ever done. And I can't say that I've really ever regretted any professional things that I have done. I've enjoyed it all.
Well, his most important moment came during the Watergate hearings. Howard Baker appointed him minority counsel. We've done the Howard Baker podcast. Some people say that he was too partisan, that he was against Richard Nixon. Other people say he was actually a dupe for Richard Nixon, which means he was probably pretty much straight down the middle. That's in contrast to the type of hearings we get in Congress today. He probably knew the answer to this question when he asked it, but it surprised White House staff aide Alexander Butterfield and became the basis for the constitutional crisis of the Watergate hearings, the presence of tapes in the White House.
So you were employed on January 21st, 1969, and continue to be employed until March 14 of this year. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Mr. Butterfield, are you aware of the installation of any listening devices in the Oval Office of the President?
I was aware of listening devices. Yes, sir.
When were those devices placed in the Oval Office?
Approximately the summer of 1970. I cannot begin to recall the precise date. My guess, Mr. Thompson, is that the installation was made between, and this is a very rough guess, April or May of 1970 and perhaps the end of the summer or early fall 1970.
Are you aware of any devices that were installed in the Executive Office Building office of the President?
Yes, sir, at that time.
Were they installed at the same time?
They were installed at the same time. They were installed, of course, for historical purposes, to record the president's business, and they were installed in his two offices, the Oval Office and the EOB office.
Well, Nixon fought to keep those tapes from Congress, and that's what precipitated the huge fight that led to the resignation of attorney generals in a Supreme Court case and ultimately Nixon leaving office. Younger people know Fred Thompson as Arthur Branch from Law and Order. Here he is with Sam Waterston. I always think Sam Waterston's overacting a little bit myself. This is Fred Thompson's final performance on Law and Order, by the way.
Heard you pulled a rabbit out of the hat.
Sometimes you just get lucky.
What's this?
My letter of resignation. You obviously need someone who's more in tune with your point of view.
If I'd wanted a yes man, you'd have been out on your butt a long time ago. I need someone who can tell me when my britches are unbuttoned.
You took me off the case. You don't have confidence in my judgment.
This is not mathematics, Jack. If every one of these cases could be prosecuted by applying some equation in a book, then you couldn't get me out of bed in the morning. I know you feel the same way. Now just tell me that you'll think this over some more. You know, one day this chair is going to be empty.
I'm no politician, Arthur.
Yeah, everybody says that.
Here's a television endorsement when he was running for president by Marie Regotti, the Tennessee whistleblower, who was played by Sissy Spacek in the movie, and Fred Thompson played himself.
30 years ago, I discovered my state's governor was selling early release to violent criminals. When I spoke up, I was threatened and fired. That's when I turned to Fred Thompson. I was convinced he had the courage to take on my fight, and I was right. The governor went to prison, and I got my life back. Fred is a man of genuine integrity.
I'm Fred Thompson, and I approve this message.
Fred Thompson was definitely a decent guy. We're going to move on now to Gunter Schabowski, who died recently at the age of 86. He was the East German functionary who didn't get the memo. He made a misstatement during a press conference in November of 1989. He spoke a little too soon, and that misstatement resulted in the demolition of the Berlin Wall and effectively the end of the Cold War. Before we talk about what he said, here's CNN with a brief history of the Berlin Wall for those of you too young to remember it.
In the embers of World War II, a defeated Germany was carved up, occupied by Britain, France, and the United States to the west, the Soviet Union to the east. Berlin, which lay well within the Eastern Territory, was also divided. The West, an island of capitalism, engulfed by a communist superbloc. Though many Berliners could still move freely within the city until August 13th, 1961. Berliners awoke to a barbed wire fence surrounding the western part of the city, a barrier to contain East Germans hungry for the lifestyles of the West. Overnight, families were split, and East Berliners working in the West were cut off from their jobs. Barbed wire soon became a sprawling concrete colossus, stretching 155 kilometers. Thousands of armed guards kept watch from 302 observation towers. Now, looking out from the east, past the outer wall, is an area known as the death zone, where guards will shoot to kill. A signal fence sends a silent alarm when touched. Next, tank traps before a terrible carpet of metal spikes, nicknamed Stalin's Lawn. Then the wall as the West saw it, 3.6 meters tall, topped with a half pipe in places to make it scaling it almost impossible. More than 100,000 East Germans attempted to escape past the wall. At least 5,000 succeeded, but more than 200 died trying.
Ich bin ein Berliner.
One of President Kennedy's most rousing speeches was delivered here at the wall, within earshot of the East. A message repeated years later by President Reagan.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
In 1989, cracks began to show. Guards were told not to shoot. Thousands rallied for freedom in East Berlin. On the 9th of November, a sea change. East Germans would be allowed to cross the border. Thousands headed to the wall. Tearful, jubilant Germans from both sides began to hack and rip down the concrete. Excited, welcoming hands reached over. East Berliners soaked up the strange Western wonderland, sparkling with the things they had so long been denied. In less than a year, the wall was in tatters, and the Iron Curtain was being pulled back. Germany, fractured for 4 decades, was united once more.
Yeah, I was in East Germany. I was at the wall. They were playing for keeps there. Anyway, here's what Gunter Schabowski said on that fateful day in 1989.
Und deshalb haben wir uns dazu entschlossen, heute eine Regelung zu treffen, die es jedem Bürger der DDR möglich macht, über Grenzübergangspunkte der DDR auszureisen. Das tritt nach meiner Kenntnis, ist das sofort. Unverzüglich.
Today, as far as I know, a decision has been made. We have decided to adopt a regulation which enables every citizen of the GDR to leave the country by way of the GDR border crossings.
Problem is, the last question he was asked was when would that begin, and he said immediately, and it wasn't supposed to take place until 4 a.m. the next morning so the East German guards could be prepared. Here's what happened.
November 9th, 1989. A momentous meeting is taking place. The Communist Central Committee is trying to find a way to stop people from fleeing west. Lift travel restrictions, but only so much. That is the answer. Citizens of East Germany will be allowed to permanently emigrate without stating a reason, but they will need to obtain a passport and then a visa. The policy is to go into effect immediately. Overnight, border personnel will be briefed on the change. Communist Party leader Gunter Schabowski holds a press conference that evening.
Gunter Schabowski comes. He was, as I remember, the party boss of East Berlin. He droned on and talking for almost an hour, and then finally somebody asked a question that was on everybody's mind. Well, what about the wall?
Although nobody in the room knows it, not even Schabowski himself, the Cold War is about to end. The biggest secret of all is that the wall will fall because of a mistake. One slip of the tongue, and the deadly symbol of the longest war of the 20th century will topple. Reading from hastily scribbled notes, Schabowski casually mentions that travel restrictions have been lifted. He seems unaware that he is not supposed to announce the policy until after border personnel have a chance to figure out how to make it work. Schabowski gets the announcement wrong. Disastrously wrong. The shock in the room is plain. Schabowski has just knocked a giant hole in the wall. The repercussions will be felt around the world. The Associated Press is the first to hit the wires with the scoop. East Germans, as they hear this on the news, start to clog the checkpoints. The guards and border workers on duty that evening in November are overwhelmed as the crowds gather, but they don't have any idea what to do. Schabowski's timing could not have been worse. In the West, the word spreads quickly.
Who knew? Chancellor Kohl didn't know. I didn't know. I'm not sure Gorbachev knew. And I'm damn sure Mitterrand and Margaret Thatcher didn't know. We didn't know how all this monumental event would affect the pride of the Soviet military, the nationalist feeling that the Soviet Empire had. And here it was crumbling right in front of their eyes. How would they react? Nobody knew for sure.
The General Secretary of East Germany, Egon Krenz, speaks about the botched announcement.
I had to decide, should we close the border crossings so tight nobody can cross, which would have meant tanks, or should we let it run its course and open the borders? For that, there was no written order or any preparation or the border patrol, which makes the situation seem chaotic.
The East German army goes on alert and invokes a state of increased combat readiness. It's midnight in Moscow, and no one is heard from the Kremlin. KGB officers in East Berlin seem unable to raise a response from their headquarters. The East German army prepares to take the steps necessary to reverse Schabowski's blunder. But for a crucial period of several hours that night, no one seems to be in charge of the border crossings at the wall.
So the border guards are standing there not knowing what to do, tens, then hundreds, and then thousands of curious and sort of excited and then perhaps increasingly angry East Berliners are coming to the checkpoints. Finally, the border guards just give in and say, okay, go ahead. And the dam is burst.
I'm going to close on that note. I want to thank my producer and IT genius, Sid Tepps. It's hard to convey today the psychological significance of the wall at the time, but in 1962 it was the subject of a popular song by Miss Toni Fisher, the lady who sang The Big Hurt, and you get an idea of what the wall meant. It's called West of the Wall. And neither she nor anybody else knew it would take almost 30 years.
West of the wall, I'm waiting for you. West of the wall, our dreams can all come true. Though we're apart a little while, my heart will wait until we both can smile.